this is Rick Caselge from exercisesforinjuries.com. I wanted to welcome you to this 5 tricks that fight back pain and tightness report. So in this video, what I'm going to go through are the 5 tricks that you can end up doing, and they all do not involve exercise. One of them ends up involving exercise, and then the other 4 well, 3 of them definitely don't involve exercise. One kind of involves exercise, and one definitely involves exercise. But I know when you watch this video and go through the 5 things, I know that you'll see that what I end up going through is unique, and if you apply what I say and give it a go, it'll end up having a dramatic effect on your back pain and your back tightness. Now that being said, let's move into the first trick, and the first trick ends up being poor posture. I've yet to come across anyone that said, hey, I have great posture. Almost everyone has poor posture, and if you end up having poor posture, that ends up having an effect on your back pain and your back tightness, especially if you sit a lot. So that's what we're going to highlight. We're going to look at back pain and your posture, specifically when you sit. So when you sit, the more ideal aligned you are, head over shoulders over hip, that ends up putting the least amount of stress on your joints and on your muscles. Now, when you move away from that, like, rounding out your back, leaning forward, tilting your head up, now your body's moved out of ideal alignment. Now you're putting the most stress you can on your joints and on your muscles. And for a while they can handle it, but at points reach where it ends up leading to pain, specifically back pain. So you want to look at what your posture is. If you end up driving or sitting or watching TV at home or at work, or you're not TV at work, but if you're sitting at work, you want to make sure that you end up being in a good alignment. So your body will be happy and it'll be the least amount of stress on your body. The second thing to remember is you want to try to get up every 20 to 40 minutes out of the chair and get moving around. And what that'll end up doing is it'll end up loosening up your back. So what they end up finding is the stiffness within the back ends up increasing drastically after about 30 minutes of sitting. So if you've ever sat for a long period of time in a row, maybe a couple hours, 2 or 3 hours, and you try to get up and your back is really stiff and sore, it takes a little while to loosen things up, that's that stiffness increasing in your back. So you want to try to get up for 20, 40 seconds. Walking around ends up being great. Now, if you're not able to walk around, I wanted to go through the third part of the poor posture, the first trick, and that ends up being doing some decompression exercises. So and I'll go through 3 progressions. So the first one you can end up doing from this just sitting in your chair. And what it is you're going to sit up nice and tall, you're going to bring the arms overhead, and then you're going to reach for the sky. You're reaching, you're trying to decompress that spine. You're going to reach for about 2 seconds and then relax. And you're going to go through 5 repetitions. And then you're going to reach again. And you can progress to reaching for 5 seconds, but I would start off with 2 because you don't want to overdo it as we're doing something targeted and unique to the body. But what we're trying to do is decompress the pressure in the spine. Now, a more challenging or progression from this is if you just go into standing, so in front of your chair, and we go for reach for the sky. So you're standing, hands are overhead, you're going to reach for the sky, and same thing, we're working on decompressing that spine. You're going to start off with reaching for 2 seconds, you can progress to 5, and you're doing 5 repetitions. Now, progression from this ends up being, I've moved the chair, Donnelly, so don't sit back down, is raising the roof is what I end up calling it. So you're going to have the hands like you're raising the roof, and now you're going to reach back and arch through your back. So now we're doing a mobility exercise, trying to get that low back moving, working on stretching the hips. And then with our arms overhead, we've kind of increased the lever so we get more of a back arch and more of a decompression going on. So this one, same thing, start off with 2 seconds, then you can go with like a 5-second hold with 5 repetitions. If you end up feeling a lot of good relief with those ones, you can progress to 10 repetitions. And I would stop at the 10 repetitions. You can end up doing this exercise, whichever level that you want, throughout the day a number of times. So don't do 100 of them in a row. It's better to do 10 and then maybe do another 10 in an hour or 2 later. So that ends up being the first trick, looking at your poor posture. Looking at what your posture is, the more you can move to ideal, the happier your back will be and your body will be and your muscles and your joints. And then trying to get up every 20 to 40 minutes and then doing the decompression exercise to help kind of reverse the pressure, the pressure buildup in your back that's happened from sitting. Now we'll move on to the second trick. Okay, now we're into the second trick, and the second trick ends up being decreasing emotional stress. Now, being pressure, just having pressure in our lives, feeling overwhelmed with what we need to get accomplished, things bothering us, being stressed about work, being stressed about, finances, just having emotional stress on ourselves end up having a drastic effect on our bodies, especially when it comes to our back pain. So when you end up having emotional stress, stuff bothering you, how your body ends up reacting is your muscles end up tightening up. You probably notice this with your back, your mid-back, your hip area. When you have, you feel overwhelmed, you have lots to do, you've got deadlines, you've got responsibilities, all of these things end up affecting your emotional stress, which ends up having an effect on your back pain. So it's really important to kind of work on decreasing your emotional stress. One way of doing that is just taking a break from your life. And one way of doing that is doing belly breathing. So lying down on the ground, relaxing, trying to clear your mind and just focusing in on your breathing. Breathing in, having all that air go into your belly, and then blowing all that air out. And it can be breathing in through the nose and breathing out through the mouth. And when you breathe out, blowing out all that emotional tension that's in your body and in your muscles. Doing that like 5-10 times, taking a couple minutes to go through it, will end up having a drastic effect on your back pain. So give that a go, and that ends up being an excellent trick, especially the second trick, when it comes to dealing with back pain and back tightness. Okay, now we're in the third trick when it comes to 5 tricks that fight back pain and tightness. Now this one, we're talking about inflammatory foods. So doing what you can to avoid inflammatory foods. So you've probably noticed when it comes to your back pain, and you maybe haven't noticed it or haven't thought about it, but what you end up eating ends up having a drastic effect on your back pain. You probably have kind of had a certain meal and your back pain has gotten worse. So you probably had a certain meal and your back pain has gotten better. So that ends up being a strong correlation and connection to what you end up eating and your back pain. So what you want to do is you want to avoid foods that inflame your body, that have a negative effect on your body and create an inflammatory response within your body. An inflammatory response is like if you've ever kind of tweaked your wrist or tweaked your ankle and it's gotten big, it's gotten hot, you've got poor movement. Well, that ends up happening inside of your body when you eat something that your body doesn't like. Now, the most common inflammatory foods end up being, sugar, like processed sugar. Other things end up being like gluten, so bread products that end up having gluten end up having an effect on your body, an inflammatory response. Processed oils, alcohol, dairy, and soy. Now everyone ends up varying on how sensitive they are to these things and how much of an effect they end up having on your body. And it's not just exclusive to this list, but I've noticed with this list that I kind of went through, the sugar, gluten, processed oil, alcohol, dairy, and soy, these are the ones that end up having the biggest effect that I've found with my clients and working with people with injuries since 1995, these end up having the biggest effect on their pain, and especially their back pain. And you don't want an increase in your back pain, you want a decrease in your back pain. So what I challenge people to do is try to minimize, or even better yet, eliminate these foods for 7 days and see how your body ends up feeling. And then you can slowly integrate these things and see if there's one or if it's multiple ones that end up having an effect on your body and an effect on your pain, specifically your back pain. Now, one thing that I ended up putting together is I found, like I said, that food ended up having an effect on pain, specifically back pain. So what I ended up doing is I ended up kind of doing my own research and putting together a list of foods that end up helping when it comes to pain and injury. And what that is, what I end up calling that list is best foods that rapidly slim and heal in 7 days. So it ends up being a list of foods that I found that end up helping rapidly slim and heal the body and have an effect on the body in a positive way in 7 days. So check that out. But firstly, I challenge you to work on, going through a 7-day period where you try to minimize or eliminate the inflammatory foods that I went through. Okay, so that ends up being the third trick. Now we'll move on to the fourth. Okay, now we're in the fourth trick when it comes to 5 tricks that fight back pain and tightness. And this one ends up kind of being a build on of the one before, and it is key micro and macronutrients. So what I found is with my clients and with myself, because of a wide variety of reasons, we end up missing key micro and macronutrients. So this could be the processed foods that we eat, the soil that our food ends up being grown in, how we end up cooking things, the types of vegetables and fruits that we end up needing. So because of these things and a wide variety of things, oftentimes we end up missing key macro and micro nutrients that end up having a positive effect on our bodies, but even more specifically, a positive effect on our pain and our back pain. So what I found is making sure that I had all of those micro and macronutrients in my body that ended up having a positive effect on myself and my clients, specifically their back pain. And 2 key micronutrients that had a big effect is boron and MSM. These 2 micro ingredients or nutrients have a positive effect on the body and a positive effect on pain. And you want to make sure that you end up having these micronutrients in your food and in your body in order to help when it comes to your body operating properly and helping you overcome pain. Now, I've tried a variety of things, eating the right fruits and vegetables, but what I found was even eating healthy and eating fruits and vegetables, I wasn't able to get all of the macro and micronutrients that I ended up needing, specifically boron and MSM, plus others. Now, what I found ended up working best for me is for me to supplement my diet with the key micro and macronutrients. Now, what I found was a supplement that I ended up putting together that ended up having all the key macro and micronutrients that end up helping when it comes to your pain and keeping your body functioning properly to kind of resist from pain. So what I put together is something called Joint Complex 4000. So it has boron and MSM in it, plus 21 to 23 other potent pain relieving micro and macronutrients that are key for the body to work properly and also to help overcome pain and prevent pain. So I would highly recommend taking a look to make sure that you end up having the micro and macronutrients in your body and also checking out Joint Complex 4000. That'll end up helping ensure that you have the micro and macronutrients in your body. So that ends up being trick number 4. Let's move on to trick number 5. Okay, we're on the last trick. Now, with this one, what I'm going to go through is the best exercises and stretches for back pain. End up being broken up into 3 groups. The first one ends up being back arches, which ends up being an excellent mobility exercise for your back. So if you end up having poor movement and you want to improve your movement in your back, that's what this is. That's what these exercises do. They're mobility exercises to help your joints move better. And when you end up having better movement, the back pain ends up subsiding. So there ends up being 2 options with this one. The first one ends up being in standing. So you're standing, and I try to do these progressive in nature. So with every repetition, I try to go a little bit further. So you're standing, hands are on your hips. You're going to arch back, have your head follow your back. You're arching to that resistant point, and then come back to the start, and then arching back again. You're going in a smooth, controlled manner. When you reach that end point, kind of holding for a second or 2, and then coming back to the start. Start off with 5 repetitions. Just go with a 2-second hold, and you can progress to 10. So this one's easy. You can do it anywhere. Now, a more intense and challenging one ends up being if you move down to the mat and you do a floor press up. So now we're lying on the mat or lying on the floor. Hands are underneath the shoulders, and then you're going to push up and arch through that back, trying to arch through the low back and mid back and keeping that head in line with the rest of the body. Coming up and coming back down. I go with the same thing, 2-second hold at the top. 1, 2, and then back down. And then trying to be progressive in nature, trying to go a little bit further with each repetition. And starting off with those 5 repetitions and progressing to the 10. With being on the floor, you're able to isolate a lot more and get a lot more movement happening in your back. With which either one of them, just pick whichever one works best for you. The standing one ends up being more convenient. You can end up doing anywhere. The mat one tends to be more aggressive and a progression. So just pick whichever one works best for you. Now the second group ends up being the decompression exercises. And I went through them in trick 1. So pick whichever one ends up working best for you. The sitting, reaching for the sky, standing, reaching for the sky, or raising the roof. Those end up being great ones that you can do at work or after sitting or while you're sitting. But they end up being great exercises to help decrease that pressure that ends up building up in the spine throughout the day. Now the third group ends up being the stretching, the back pain specific stretching that ends up loosening up the muscles that are pulling on your pelvis and your back. So what ends up happening is you end up having tightness in the muscles around your hips and back, and that tightness ends up pulling on your back and pelvis, leading to back pain. So we need to release that tension and tightness in those muscles. And we do that with specific back stretching. Now the 2 that I end up liking to do, one's in standing, one's in kneeling. It ends up being, the first one ends up being a standing hip flexor stretch. So you got one leg out in front, one leg behind. Okay, you're on the ball of the foot back here, slightly bend here, bent front leg. You're tightening up that abdominal area, bring the glutes forward, and now you're going to bring the arm overhead. Now the arm overhead really intensifies the stretch in the front of the hip, iliacus muscle, and also in that rectus femoris. Got the hand on the wall to eliminate balance because we really want to isolate and target the static stretch. You're going to hold the light stretch for 20 seconds, and then you're going to alternate back and forth going twice on each side. Now after this one, you're going to roll into the next one, which ends up being, we'll go against the wall again, and we're going to do the side bending one. So we're going to do the standing hip flexor with a side bend. So bringing the arm overhead, yep, and then we're going to bend a little bit to the side through the back, and now you'll feel that stretch move from the front of your hip now into the deep spine area, right up against your spine, looking for a light stretch, really targeting that back area. And same thing, light stretch, 20 seconds, twice on each side, alternating. We have the hand on the wall to eliminate balance. Now, standing tends to be fine. If you want more of an intense stretch, you can end up moving down to the mat and do it in a 90-90 position. Good, 90-90 position, one leg in front of the hip, this foot in line with the back hip. Good. Going to tighten up that abdominal area, bring the hips forward, Bring that arm up overhead. Good. That arm overhead really helps target the stretch. Got stretch in the front of the hip. And with us being kneeling, you'll probably feel it in the rectus femoris or quad area. So we got iliacus being stretched, quad being stretched, 20 seconds, light stretch, twice on each side. And then we move to the next one, which ends up being that side bending stretch, really targeting psoas. Good. Overhead, side bending, feeling that stretch move from the front of the hip down into deep into that spine. It's less of an intense stretch, but more of a deeper stretch. Light stretch, 20 seconds, twice on each side, alternating. Perfect. So pick which option ends up working best for you. The standing ends up being more convenient and easier on the knees. The kneeling one ends up being more intense and more of an advanced stretch. So there you go. Pick one exercise from each of the group, whatever is appropriate for you to really help you when it comes to exercises for back pain relief, stretches for back pain relief. So there you go. That ends up being the 5 tricks to help address back pain and tightness. I hope you enjoyed the report and the video. Make sure to swing by exercisesforinjuries.com. Let me know what you think of the video and how applying the tricks in the video have helped you out. So this is Rick Casselge from exercisesforinjuries.com. Make sure to swing by exercisesforinjuries.com. Enter in your injury or pain. There's a good chance of an article, video, or an interview that'll help you overcome your injury or pain. So that's it. This is Rick Casselge from exercisesforinjuries.com saying take care and bye-bye.